you don't see the world as it is, you see the world as you are. In this video, I'll talk about a key secret that I unlocked for myself for a life of what I call peaceful ambition. Um, my name is Adrian Rădoi, and this channel is all about personal transformation. I've been on a journey myself for the last 5 years, and I've learned a lot that I now feel compelled to share with the world. I am documenting the journey throughout, my life, because of course, once you are on the journey of transformation, this never ends. But I think I know enough at this point to be able to confidently share it with you, hoping that you might apply some of the insights that you get from this video and improve the quality of your life overall. So the key secret to living a better life in general is to develop compassion. Um, so maybe let's define a bit compassion, right? What does it mean, compassion? Most people, I guess also you are more familiar with the word empathy. Um, Empathy is feeling with someone, right? As men, I can confess to you that this is very difficult to do in itself because we are always focused to solve problems. And this is a lesson that is very difficult to learn. And even if we spend time in our marriage, years and years, in which we have countless opportunities to learn this lesson, it's very difficult to hear a loved one telling you some negative experiences from their life and not be incentivized to think in solution mode, in problem solving mode. I do that all the time, but now I catch myself faster than before. Um, Before I was so compelled in thinking about solutions to the problems that I first analyzed as being problems, and then I came up with solutions without even asking for, you know, advice, without asking if the advice is required or not. The solution seemed so trivial and easy to implement for me that I felt compelled to just share them, thinking that this is my biggest contribution in this discussion. And of course, this doesn't help when you work as a consultant for a decade and you are an engineer and you think about fixing issues. So, unfortunately, this doesn't always apply to people because the human existence in general is not a linear progression of things. Humans are messy in the way that they interact with the world. And I can speak for myself here because in order to be empathic with someone, you have to spend enough of your energy into really understanding their own view of the world. Now, what I found even more powerful than empathy, and something that helped me actually evolve really and make improvements that I never thought were possible for me, and really be able to help others in a real way, where I don't have to completely stifle my impulses to not do anything about it. Well, the other term that is the focus of this video is called compassion, right? So what is compassion? Um, in contrast to empathy, which is feeling with someone, where women, if you can imagine, for empathy, women are very good at it because they can talk between themselves and just listen to each other's problem without feeling that need to interfere all the time. And they are just supporting, right? I feel with you. It must be hard. Oh, it must feel in a certain way, and this kind of discussion, which for us as men, I'm sure that most of you resonate, it's not possible, or at least it's not very intuitive and requires a lot of energy because we always want to solve it. We always want to see, okay, this is the resolution of your problem, because clearly this is a problem if you're talking about it to me. So this is how you solve it. But we should not do that, right? And I mean, everyone should do whatever they consider doing, but I know for myself that I cannot do that anymore. Compassion, on the other hand, is feeling for someone. Now, this seemingly small difference makes all the difference because feeling for someone implies some sort of action on our behalf. And the kind of formula that I found, which considers the way that I would like to help, is that this action ultimately doesn't really require necessarily a doing. And let me explain a bit more what I mean with that. If you take compassion to an extreme, let's do a mind exercise together here. If you take compassion to an extreme, you get extreme compassion, like being extremely compassionate. What does it mean? Well, it ultimately means becoming the other person. Imagine that you share everything. You share that person's background, you share basically their cultural upbringing, their life experience up to that point, the different events that happened to them or for them throughout history, the very way they integrated those events into their mind, the way they recollect those events and the corresponding emotional attachment, the projections that they are making based on what happened to them and how they see what happened to them, and everything around that, right? All these variables, all these nuances. If we were to inherit that very specific to the T way of thinking and viewing of the world, their own modeling of the world, of the reality that they are living, we would simply become them, right? As an exercise, we can all do this. Just think of it. Or just simplify it. If you were to simply inherit their brain, and maybe that's not enough, their whole nervous system and their brain, right? You would effectively think the same things. You will behave the same way. And that applies to everyone in this world, which is incredibly powerful and freeing and liberating for me emotionally. Because once you understand this, you are not in fixing mode all the time. You realize that people cannot fix what they cannot understand. And when we come as people with a better, let's say, vantage point, articulating what they're saying into a problem and saying, look, this is how you have to fix it. First of all, we don't even know if they really understand the way that we articulate their problem, because the analogies that we use and the obviousness of the problem and the solution is not as obvious for them as well, right? So they have to understand what we are telling them from their own subjective interpretation of what we are telling them. And maybe the solution implies something that for us is natural, but for them is very difficult. Maybe the solution from us is, yeah, just give them a call and tell them, look, this is natural and we should not fight against this. Let's catch up, like we do, guys. No matter how strong a fight is, we are always able to sort it out by just going out for a beer, right? And typically we are in the extremes, like either we don't give a shit about anything and we are just cool about it and it's like, yeah, don't care about it, or it's something strong, it's something very intense, but that intensity, it's also very limited in time, right? It's something acute, and you can typically solve it if you have a strong connection, and relationship with dates for years and years with that guy. You can just tell him, let's go for a beer. You don't even have to apologize necessarily, but they understand you. With girls it's not the same, with women it's not the same. Women have more intricate social interconnections and different layers of complexity, and it's intriguing for me, of course, but that's not the point. It's not relevant if for me it's intriguing or not. What's relevant and important for me, in my case as a husband or as a colleague or as a family member of a woman who needs some kind of emotional assistance, it's not my goal to try to fix anything. Because trying to fix something would imply the fact that they are less capable than I am, that they are a bit more broken than I am, because simply I can fix things much faster and much easier with this incredible best solution, which is never the case. So extreme compassion, if only an exercise at the beginning, I think it's very powerful to realize how simple in essence is to really help someone. And this actionable thing that I was talking about in compassion, where you don't only have to feel for them, but you don't only have to feel with them, like in empathy, you feel for them, right? The actionable part comes with being able to feeling for them and embody their own view of the world, transpose yourself into their shoes. That's difficult to do, of course, but it's simple in its essence, because sometimes the action is a non-action, right? Sometimes if you are able really to put yourself into someone else's shoes fully, that implies that you forget your own agenda. That implies that you are forced into real active listening. You are forced into forgetting about your own reasoning and logical thinking about how to articulate their problem, how to find a potential solution. And you're simply going there, forgetting yourself in this exercise, and be there for them without, of course, sacrificing yourself, without completely losing yourself in their problems. And that's the key in the end, right? Because becoming compassionate at the extreme would imply embodying fully their own state, their own physical state, their own mental state, because otherwise you would not be able to live their experience. But with enough practice and with enough development of emotional maturity, you get to do this without losing yourself in that person. You anchor yourself into something which is much stronger than your own mental position. You anchor yourself into something that, now we go inevitably into a rather spiritual direction, but you anchor yourself into, let's call it, presence. Maybe you've heard about people saying, you can hold the space for someone. What does it mean concretely? Like I said, I'm an engineer. I have an engineering background. My own personal transformation journey, though it was messy, like any personal transformation, and it was messy by the nature of it, and because I was forced into it by a personal crisis, now escaping this initial crisis and thinking retroactively about what I learned along the way, I am compelled to create for myself a kind of blueprint or some sort of an engineered approach to continue to transform in a way that makes sense for me, based on the actual things that I learned about from the thousands of hours of listening to podcasts, all sorts of books spanning from neuroscience to anthropology, behavioral psychology, cognitive psychology, spirituality, metaphysics, everything you can imagine related to personal development, right? It's the traditional spiritual path of self-discovery, which is messy, right? But now I have to make sense out of it because I feel compelled to help fellow human beings who might feel a bit confused or isolated in their own journey, or maybe feeling that they are inevitably going into a direction where they have to explore these things, but they don't know how to do it. And this channel is all about that, to give you concrete tools which are simple in their nature, not to be able to actually use them necessarily, but conceptually. And once you understand something conceptually, you can then progress towards implementing that information and having that knowledge embodied. So then you can just live it. Now, let's talk a bit more still about this extreme compassion, because it's rather an advanced concept as such, but it's even more simple than pure classical compassion. And let me explain why. If you are simply compassionate, you have to keep your foot in your own reality for a while. You are feeling for someone, but at the same time, you try to understand how that applies to you, so eventually you can give them a proper advice. This is what most people do who are capable of expressing compassion in the first place, because you have to be in a place where you don't need anything back from that person. Being compassionate means that you are able to forget your own agenda, even if for a couple of minutes. By fully resonating with someone, you don't need anything for you in those moments. And again, if you think as compassion as like a general thing, you first empathize with their situation, you acknowledge it, then you try to listen from the angle of translating that experience to you, and see that at the end of their narrative and their expression, you are able maybe to resonate with your own story of life and maybe share from that angle, not as an advice, not as an uncalled solution, but simply an experience that they might resonate with. So there can be some sort of a sense of relief. Look, I'm not alone in this. He was able to listen to me. He was compassionate, right? Um, the other gets this kind of feeling of being understood, which is very good. I had to go through an accelerated mode of living compassion. And when I talk about extreme compassion, I simply forget about the second leg of me anchoring in my own reality. I I do my main focus, which is a bit paradoxical because it doesn't require effort ultimately. My main focus is on being fully that person. And I think this is why I'm drawn to coaching and transformational coaching specifically, because I know the power of it. And I know that I'm not special in any way. Um, but I have this ability, which is completely counterintuitive to me, considering my upbringing, where I was very egoistic and I was thinking only about myself. Um, and it took me a while to really understand that I was doing that. But anyway, that's another story. So the idea is that at this point, I'm able to fully focus on the other person and forget about me, which is very important, because the other element that I still keep, which is anchored in me, is this space that I allured to, right? This presence, this kind of compassionate mirror, if you want, for the other person to see themselves in and explore their own potential solution in that space of presence that I create for them. So I become simply a reflective, emotional anchor for them, with this kind of non-judgmental space in which they can explore their own problems, if you want. And most of the time, this doesn't require any kind of answer, to my amazement, right? I heard that a lot of time already, like, most people just need to be listened to. And I didn't understand, what does it mean? What does it mean? I mean, why should I just stay here and listen to someone's problem for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and not do anything about it? It's a wasted time for me and for them, right? Why would someone do that? What does it mean to just have someone, being listened to? It sounded absurd. And again, I was also especially at fault here because I come from a profession where I have to think about solutions. First, I'm a man, right? We are all thinking about problem solving. This is how we think. This is how the mind of man evolved throughout the human evolution. We had to think about, going for the next hunt, being able to create the next strategy to move in a better spot to live or whatever. We were not uh, evolution basically did not select for traits which facilitate empathy and compassion for us men. And this is a huge problem ultimately, I think, when it comes down to intimate relationships, because irrespective of the love that everyone carries for each other, this very nature of how men and women think, which is different, leads inevitably to all sorts of conflicts. And I'm actively trying to work on that and have a genuine and trusting connection and communication channel with my wife, with my kids, with everyone I meet. So I get to expose this kind of primordial programming of the mind, if you want, this kind of biases which force us to think in a certain way, which inevitably leads to conflict. So now, because of my transformation and because of my journey, and because I had to stay within myself for so long and to answer complicated questions, like very deep questions that when you approach them with an analytical and engineering background, they become very painful, right? Like, what's the meaning of it all? What's the purpose of life? What's my role in this landscape? What should I do best? What should I focus on? Why is this happening? How can I understand this? And of course, in order to find a reason and a reasonable answer to all these questions, you have to investigate a lot. And my investigations lasted for 4 years, 5 years, even today. But at the beginning, they were more intense. And I had like a lot of learnings. My mind focused exclusively on this. And now this is a nice challenge and a nice experience because my mind is naturally thinking about it from an angle of understanding the truth. My mind is not now trying to think from an angle of defending my own subjective position, my own ego mind created reality against the reality created by anyone that I encounter. And this is a very, very nice place to be in because I'm purely just interested at and fascinated by the human mind. I want to understand how things work. I want to understand how reality works, how I fit in it, how everything is a playful game, if we want to see it like that, and how leveraging this kind of perspective, I can support people in their very own unique journeys without tampering with them, without feeling compelled to actively help them or advise them or tell them what they should do because it worked for me. Everyone in this world, another realization that helped me a lot. Everyone, absolutely everyone, is in their own unique journey of evolution, self discovery, transformation, however you want to call it. And we cannot tamper with any of them because they are all sacred. At the beginning, when I was discovering things that worked for me, look, if you do this, you get this result. If you do this, you get this benefit. It's amazing. Try it, do it. And people that cared about me and they are close to me in my life, they were at best smiling and thanking me for the information. And I was taken aback a bit by that. I didn't understand why is this happening. I mean, this is clearly something that is very useful and could dramatically improve your life. And I care about you. I love you. Why don't you do it, right? And that adds unnecessary burden on ourselves. Much easier is to simply be an example for them so they get inspired along the way by seeing the kind of changes that you did in your own life. Because they know you enough to see the kind of changes that you are able not to only implement, but to keep and stay committed to and transform them into good lifestyle choices along the way. And this is what will inspire them, not you telling them that they should do this or should do that. Because people by default are defensive when it comes down to getting advice from the outside. Because getting advice implicitly means that you have a problem that you might not be aware of, or you have a problem that even if you are aware of, I'm more aware of it than you, and I have a better resolution than you have on your own problem, which makes the other feel weak or weaker, more vulnerable, and ultimately less understood Because again, we see their problem from our own angles, but they have their own interpretation of their problems. And when we come with a strong solution to what we think they experience as a problem, it's also an egoistic thing, because we don't obviously take enough time to really understand how they see that as a problem, or if they perceive it as a problem at all. And we feel that the solution constructed against our own reasoning of their problem is what will fix them. It's just waste. It's simply an added, you know, even if it, in the extreme, even if it makes sense for them, it's not something that they came up with. And this is something that in coaching is stressed a lot, right? You might get very enthusiastic about understanding how you can fix someone else's problem, and you tell them, and they resonate with it, right? When they hear it, maybe because it's a new angle, it's a new way of looking at something familiar for them, for sure. So they might be interested in the moment, and they might be, oh yes, that makes sense actually, okay, thank you for that, I will actually, yeah, I will implement it. And you're like, yes, I helped that person, they didn't think about this, but now you see, with my incredible brain, I created something of unique value, and now they are like implementing it, and thanks to me they will have a better life. First of all, your contribution didn't help at all, because they will not be able to integrate that thing, that rationale, that solution, that logic that you expressed so cleanly. For them was clean only when you told it to them, only when they heard it. But the next day, 1 week after, 1 month after that discussion, they will barely remember what they heard, right? They will remember maybe, I'm facing again this problem, and I remember having this discussion with this guy 1 month ago. He had this interesting approach, but I don't really remember. So can you imagine that if they don't even remember what you discussed, how would they be able to implement and sustain that kind of implementation for lasting change? That's why forcing lasting change on someone, imposing change on someone, is a futile effort. It cannot work, right? Because it requires them to fully own that answer and commit to it and defend it against mind-made narratives who try to keep them stuck in a familiar past. Change requires becoming someone else. Stop. Real transformation requires you becoming another person. Not in a real way, of course, because you are still preserving the same identity towards your family members, your employer, towards whoever. Everyone will recognize you, of course. But in terms of how you feel about yourself, how you see yourself, your own identity has to evolve. And alongside with it, your belief systems, the way you think, the way you act, the way you are curious about learning from your experiences, all this changes. And it changes to a point of not being even recognizable from how you used to operate 5 years or 10 years ago. And I say that from my own experience, and I'm very passionate about this, because the problem is, at the beginning you don't even know what's possible. That's what's interesting and compelling about personal transformation. It's that when you live in a world of unknown unknowns, it's not a problem. But because I was forced into deep introspection and find answers to very tricky questions that don't have objective answers, by the way, right? What's the meaning of life? Doesn't have a real answer, but you have to find the answer for yourself. Because if you find that, then you don't care about anything else, because that answer is your own truth. And this kind of questions only have subjective truth. They are not, I mean, you can be nihilistic and you can say there is no meaning in life. We are just like, ephemeral beings. We live, we die, and then nothing happens. Or you can find fulfillment in just simply living and becoming a person that you are impressed by every single day when you look at yourself in the mirror, and not for your own benefit but for the benefit of others, right? You can find answers to all sorts of interesting questions. You have just to have the willingness to do it. So again, my most important lesson here is that change and transformation is something very intimate, very personal, and cannot be forced upon anyone. Every person is in their own unique journey of transformation. Some people don't get to that critical point in which they are actually compelled to act in a way that leads to evolution, to consistent evolution. Most of us, including me, until I was forced by this personal crisis into this journey, I was just cruising along mostly. I was allured by this kind of external metrics of success, of having a good career, of having a good position. And I was pursuing that because that was the only thing that I knew. But now, once I discovered this deeper reality, if you want, and deeper way of parsing reality and looking at things, it gave me such a broader perspective of what really matters and how everything is ultimately perfect, right? That's maybe another incredible realization. And interestingly enough, seeing everything as already always being perfect doesn't put me in a situation of not wanting to do anything anymore, because there is not everything is unimprovable. No, that's the baseline, right? If everything is always perfect, then perfection has no meaning as such. However, I still am a conscious human being, that I can take conscious decisions towards improving myself against my own metrics, against my own standards, against my own projected future about how I could become, about how I see myself before, without judging, simply playing this as a game, right? Just seeing, how can I become even better? How can I improve on this? And the beauty of it is that I don't do it for egoistic reasons. I don't do it so I can feel good about myself. I do it because I care about the people that I love to benefit from the best version of me possible. Because the better I become, the better I can serve them. And of course, the better I can feel about myself, because I can help them better and better. I can serve them better and better. I can be a better husband, a better father, a better friend, a better whatever, cousin. So this is something very compelling, and it's the kind of win-win strategy which it's really win-win if you think about it. And this ability of switching the reward from doing something uniquely and solely for my own needs, so I can feel good about myself because I have this new thing, to comply to some sort of external validation metrics and people thinking stuff about me. I simply want to take me out of the equation completely, find simple truths to live my life by, which will allow me to focus all my energy into becoming the type of person that I can become for the benefit of others. That's my primary contribution in the world. I want to serve the people that I'm surrounded by in the best way possible, because that will act as a forcing function for my own personal development. So why would then I pursue that? If you are still with me up to this point, let's talk about extreme compassion again a bit in this new context, in this new light, right? So I said that in extreme compassion, you are able to really feel for that person fully, be there fully for them. What does it mean, right? Going back to, I need to help. Okay. So if you become that person, if you would virtually inherit everything and you are like so in line with them, so aligned with their state of mind that you are really feeling everything they're feeling and you are living their own experience. I'm not saying this is something easy to do, but idealistically you would be able to do it. At the same time, you are the space, you are the anchor into the present moment, you are the anchor of emotional stability that they can leverage, right? You are the kind of stability, right? The presence that they can leverage from you in order to find their own answers. This is why sometimes people who are really compassionate can actively help someone without telling them to do anything. Because this silence that they were able to keep, this is what allowed the other person to analyze their own situation in a way that was not possible before. Because this very presence, this kind of compassionate awareness, if you want, this kind of stability, emotional stability into presence that you create for the other is what gives them the courage maybe to explore things in a way that they were not able to if they were only alone by themselves, only in their mind, right? So you delegate somehow this incapability of others to create their own state of presence, so needed to give you the kind of insights that you need to come up with the answers for your problems. And this is what a good coach does ultimately. Ideally, a good coach is someone who just holds a mirror, and this kind of spacious awareness and compassionate awareness and the safe space psychologically, if you want, for the other person to see themselves in it, see themselves in this space and investigate their own problems in a way that would not be otherwise possible for them by themselves. And this is very powerful because it means that we are not, losing ourselves in them. We are not getting um, we are not getting completely overwhelmed by their intense emotions. We are just being able to stay with the feeling that they are not able to sustain for themselves because it might be too painful. They might be a bit scared or fearful to explore something. But if you are there with them to give them this confidence that the exploration is safe, because they know that they can rely on our anchor of stability to take them back from wherever they go in terms of scary landscapes, then that's everything that ultimately is required for them to be able to find their own answers. Because guess what, those answers are always there available for being found. And your seeming lack of contribution by telling them what to do is the best kind of contribution you could have ultimately on someone. Because if they find those answers by themselves, they will have all the possible context in which they can accept the answer and integrate that answer into their life, which will ultimately lead to lasting change and personal evolution. And this is what's required. But because the journey of self-discovery is so lonely, it's so confusing, so scary, so difficult to penetrate alone, which is paradoxical, because why should we be scared of anything in the end, right? It's our own mind, it's our own past, it's already in us. What's to be scared of ultimately? But this is how it works, right? We are scared, and that's part of the human experience. And it's not a sign of weakness to want someone else's help. But some people, depending on where they are in this journey, they are not available to external help. I was not available to external help. When this personal crisis hit me, when I heard in 2019 that my mother has cancer, my whole foundation of emotional stability basically collapsed in front of me in a matter of seconds. And I was then getting busy to try to repair things, right? And Of course, this is something that cannot be repaired, because with my analytical mind, I knew that the situation is bad enough that a full remission is not possible. So I knew that from the beginning. I didn't know how much time she still has, but I knew that for sure she will not become healthy anymore. Like, she will not live 30 more years. And to be able to find peace in this reality, the journey to finding that peace, it's very challenging, of course, as you can imagine, especially when you are a single child and you live in a nuclear family, and your mother is your pillar of stability and support. Not very easy, to just go into complete equanimity. So of course, at the beginning, the mind is racing all over the place and trying to, to grasp some sort of a stable ground. And I'm not joking, it took me like at least 1 or 2 years of daily listening to Eckhart Tolle for like 6 hours a day or something. It's something incredible, just to be able to function, you know. She passed away 4.5 years later, in December 2023, 5 days from my 35th birthday, and one day from her 58th birthday. So we caught both our birthdays in the hospital in her last week of life. And I'm now smiling because I remember I told her that that was the best birthday I had in my life, my 35th birthday. And she was conscious at that point, and she was happy to hear it. And now when I think back at that week and how many things I still learn, um, more than a year after that event, how many things I still learn from that event, it's so powerful for me. And how I think at that week today is absolutely incredible, because I see it as indeed the most amazing week of my life, the best, the most amazing anniversary I had, because I see all of it as an incredible gift that she unconsciously made um, for me to be able to wake up to this reality that I'm now living, and be able to do this and help people on a magnitude that she was never able to do, and compensate for the fact that she would not have been able to reach to so many people. And I can do that on her behalf. And that's my very rewarding moral obligation, I would say, at this point. So the very fact that I can see what happened to her as an incredible gift that she unconsciously made to her only son out of unconditional love, so I can finally wake up to the beauty of this life and not waste my adult life on being frustrated, not being happy with myself, not being able to be kind with myself and implicitly with others, not being able to really experience true love through extreme, vulnerability, if you want. Because of course, the very fact that I upload this video to YouTube is a proof of extreme vulnerability for me. Being able to share this with such equanimity and with a smile on my face with the whole world, eventually, hypothetically, right, theoretically, even if I know that only a couple of people are looking maybe at this clip at this point, at least, doesn't matter. In the end, the very fact that I can do this is part of my healing journey. And I share this with the world because I feel like I have to do it. And I feel like this is what accelerates my healing. Because if I would keep everything within me, it will just tear me apart. The very fact that I can make out of that last week with her in the hospital the most amazing week of my life is the gift that I give back to her. is the gift that I feel compelled to share with the world, because she, in her incommensurable love, would not have created, even unconsciously, the the worst week of my life, when it was also my birthday, right? So it's not possible. So of course I see it as the best week of my life, as the most amazing gift, as the most precious gift, because it is. Because if I would not do this, then it would be indeed a bad thing, because I would not be able to make use and reward her for the whole sacrifice, if I would not be able to serve people and give back to the world what she gave me. So I frame everything in a very positive way, because it's the only way it's possible for me to frame things in, right? I cannot just say, oh, this is a bad thing that happened to me. Oh, no, no. Of course, it was like that when it happened. But then, after 5 years of asking the same questions every day, answers come, and things just take a transcendent reality. It's difficult not to bring in spiritual concepts in this discussion, because ultimately, this kind of space awareness, this kind of equanimity, this kind of presence, this kind of, divine touch, if you want, or however you want to call it, life, God, whatever. I'm a Christian um, you know, by origins. I don't practice it as such, so I would not say I'm dogmatic. No, I am a spiritual person. However, I have a direct connection with God, how I see God for me. So when your life and your reality transforms, like it did happen for me, and you see the world in a completely different way, in this kind of new, positive, constructive, opportunistic way, instead of pragmatic pessimism, how I used to call my view of the world, like, you know yeah, this might work, but I don't think so, right? Problem focused exclusively. Now I am curious about the problems, just so I can find solutions for them. Before, I was just defending my limited ability to address problems by stating that there are problems, without necessarily having a say about how to address them, right? And I thought that simply finding problems and finding ways why something should not work is, the maximum of what you can achieve. But ultimately, that's the simplest thing that you can do, because the mind primordially is programmed through evolution to only see problems, to only see ways that something can fail. It's much more complicated to see positive things. That's why inversion works so well, right? If you want to create something good, if you want to build something good, you have to see how you can build it bad first, because that's much easier to clarify. And then from that, you inverse and you create something good out of it, right? But yeah, back to my origin story. The very fact that I land like this, and I can talk for 50 minutes about things that 5 years ago I would never have imagined, is testament to what's available on the other side of a scary journey, a confusing journey, a journey where you feel isolated, alone, and misunderstood most of the time. You're not alone. You're not misunderstood. You have yourself, first of all. And despite being immensely, immensely grateful for the support of my wife, who was like an angel throughout this journey, because as a doctor, she had to assist my mother throughout those 4 years with medical assistance. At the same time, she was acting as a daughter-in-law, and she was the wife of a guy who was suffering deeply and had to find again his anchor of stability. And at the same time, she got pregnant at some point, and COVID happened at the same time. So while she was pregnant in COVID, she had to take care of my mother and me and my father and everyone around and herself. And I can only imagine that if she would not have been there for me, there are high chances that I would not have made it on the other side. A good friend of mine told me that what I experience is called post-traumatic growth, right? Like your life shatters in front of you, and then you are lucky to find ways out of it. And I consider myself one of the lucky ones, thanks to my wife. But I also know that there are a lot of people who don't have this chance that I had, to have someone like my wife in their life to represent this anchor of stability that they need when they go through this process. Because I offloaded my stability, emotional stability and psychological stability temporarily to my wife. I didn't think about her potentially not being there for me. I took her for granted because I had no choice. I was not able to also cope with the fact that she might not be there for me and she has her own needs. It would not have been possible for me, right? The pressure for me to evolve and find my own answers were so big that I was not able to also think about her. And she was there all along without asking anything of me. And this happened 1 year after our marriage, as you can imagine how difficult it was, right, for her. But now, part of my mission, of course, is to honor her efforts and her herself for the amazing person she is, not only in my life, but in the life of my family and in the life of the community that she serves as a medic here in France, in Metz. So if you don't have someone like her in your life, I can be that person for you. If you are going through this kind of growth pains alone, know that there is someone there. And if you are in this video after 52 minutes at this stage of my channel and you hear this message, it's difficult, I think, not to find it compelling to ask for help, because there is no weakness in asking for help. If you are not yet at the kind of deep suffering where you are not available for help, like I was at the beginning, know that you don't have to go there. You don't have to wait to hit a rock bottom so you can find your answers alone, because you might never find them. I was lucky. I was very lucky. And even today it's not very easy for me to ask for help, I am actively asking today for help from people who help me grow and continue to learn about how can I make this kind of message available to more people. How can I reach more people who are in a very similar situation like mine, that could benefit from the lessons that I learned along the way, and who might need the kind of guide that can assist them in ultimately what's a lonely journey, right, for everyone. But knowing that there is someone there who understands you and has a very system-like or process-like way of going through things with tools that he lives his own life by today, I think that's very powerful. This being said, appreciate immensely you being here with me to this point, and I'll be here for you all the time, and I'm rooting for you.